Linda presents this unabridged recording of Lofty, My Life in Short, a memoir, written by Lofty Fulton with Nicole Partridge, and read by Lofty Fulton. The dedication reads, to anyone who has ever battled with anxiety, depression, or any kind of mental illness, and to those who love and care for them, know you are not alone. To those who have been bullied, belittled, marginalised and discriminated against, I hope you can find some solace in these pages. Again, you are not alone. To the love of my life, Helen Trineri, without your love, compassion, acceptance, understanding and strength, this book would never have seen the light of day. I love you more than words can and will ever express. Thank you. Prologue. I was standing in front of Dr. Spence, our paediatrician, for my infant checkup. Dr. Spence was a softly spoken, middle-aged man with thinning hair and glasses. Mum and Dad had seen him several times when I was a baby, but this visit was the first one I'd remember. I was 5. Dr. Spence's office was classy. His dark, stained wooden desk was ornate, with one of those leather inlays on the top where he could write a letter, a prescription, or something else of importance without fear of his penmanship scratching the surface of the beautiful bureau. The chair, equally spectacular, was leather-backed, and it swivelled from side to side and rocked back and forth. It could have been a distraction for me if the moment hadn't turned so serious. Dr. Spence wore a white coat and had a stethoscope around his neck. His examination table was against the wall. There was a set of small steps which could be dragged out for little kids like me to climb up to the table. A curtain could be pulled across for privacy. The piece de resistance was a round, fat jar of coloured jelly beans, a prescription for hurties when needles were administered. My legs dangled over the examination table as Dr. Spence gave me the checkup that all kids of that age receive. Satisfied he'd seen enough to know I was okay, he lifted me down off the table and motioned for me to take a seat next to Mum. Now, Dr. Spence reached for his jelly bean jar and opened the lid. "Would you like a jelly bean, Ian?" Dr. Spence said, holding out the jar. I shook my head. "No, thank you." Not needles again, I thought to myself. After reassuring me there'd been no needles, Dr. Spence lowered his voice, as if about to share a secret he didn't want even the walls in his office to hear. For a moment, I felt somewhat privileged. I was to be let in on top-secret information and entrusted with it. I leaned in, my eyes wide. My memory of the next few minutes is unclear, except for this. "Ian," said Dr. Spence in his gentle but firm voice, "you will never grow up to be tall." I stared at him in total disbelief and looked over at Mum, who fidgeted uncomfortably. "Are you sure? How do you know?" To a little boy with big dreams, this was monumental. Then I threw all my 5-year-old logic at him. "I know I'm not as tall as the other kids, but I'll catch up. Besides, I haven't finished growing yet," I said. "I'm just a kid. All kids are small. Give me a chance." There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Dr. Spence picked up the jar and again offered me a jelly bean. Again, I refused. "You're wrong," I protested through tears. "I wish I was," said Dr. Spence. He tried to explain more about my dwarfism. I wasn't listening. Mum was crying. Of course, she was already privy to this information, as she and Dad had been dealt this devastating blow when I was a newborn. It must have been difficult for her, knowing the sole purpose for this visit was to break the news that would change my life forever. "How tall will I be?" I asked, trying to catch my breath in between sobs. Dr. Spence pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. "I'm not exactly sure," he said, "but you won't be as tall as your brother and sisters." I frowned and said nothing. After another moment's silence, Mum thanked Dr. Spence for his time, stood...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?